Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. Today, I am super excited and honored to have Creighton Bluejays coach, Kirsten Bernthal Booth. Did I get that right?
Pretty close.
All right, there we go.
I go by Molly at Starbucks because no one can say my name. So,
All right, well, hey, welcome to the podcast. And the way we start things off was do 3 random questions. So are you ready?
All right, here we go.
All right, last TV show or movie you watched?
I just got done watching the Ozarks.
Okay, nice. Most interesting place you've ever played volleyball match in?
Outdoors in Nicaragua on a cement court. I coached volleyball. I didn't play there, but I still think that counts.
Oh, absolutely. There's more to that story. What was that like?
It was honestly top 5 moment in my life. I remember thinking like, this is amazing. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. And number 3, best thing about where you live?
The people. Wonderful people in the Midwest.
Excellent. All right. So welcome to the podcast. So how did the last season end up for you guys? How was the last season?
Last season was awesome. I think we evaluate publicly a lot by how we finish, and we had a great year. We won the Big East. We were picked second, and we won it. Maybe we tied. We tied for first, but we put banners up. We won the Big East tournament. We went to the Sweet 16 for the first time in several years and lost a heartbreaker to Louisville in 5. But I think that's the part that you put on the papers and you put on social media. But it was just a wonderful year. I mean, I loved every single one of our players. We didn't deal with crap off the court. I think as a coach, sometimes if you on the wrong year or have the wrong kids, you're spending time putting out fires. And I don't think we had a fire this year. And I remember saying to our staff multiple times throughout the year, like, never take this for granted that we've got a great group, because these, things can get disrupted quickly in any sort of coaching or leadership type, when you have a group of people. And it was an awesome, awesome journey. And I loved the women and I loved my staff. Just one thing I do well is I surround myself with good people. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely a testament this year. So really fun year.
Excellent. And now for you, when did you first discover volleyball?
This is actually a funny story. I was, I think, 7th or 8th grade. The gym teacher was the volleyball coach, but he was not my gym teacher. He was one of my friends. And he handed her a flyer to what was then Lincoln Juniors, which was a club. And I remember I was in the hall and she handed it to me and said, "I don't like volleyball, but maybe you'd like it." And I went home and I took it to my parents. And, club sports nowadays, I mean, I have 3 daughters in club, and it's more than a mortgage payment. It's so much money. But it was $40 to play and you could fundraise it all. And that's where I started. So it wasn't a big risk to start. And, I was tennis was my primary sport. Mm-hmm. That was kind of what I was more into. But I loved the team aspect of volleyball. So I just started, and I had some great coaches that were volunteer coaches for this club.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into it.
Excellent. And now, after all these years, what is the hook volleyball still has on you?
That's a great question. I think I love some of the things I love about volleyball are the obvious. It's physical, it's powerful, it takes a lot of skill. It's not pure athleticism. There's a lot of skill to it. You got to work together. It's not like basketball where one player can kind of dominate. Right. You can have a great setter and have a lousy team, right? Like, you've got to make sure you have a great hitter but have a lousy team because you don't have a passer. You have to have all these pieces. But I think I love some things that I love are that each point you come together. And that drives my brother, who's like, you guys spend more energy cheering than you do playing, so that drives some people nuts. I love that connection piece of volleyball. I like the fact, very similar to tennis, that if you play poorly for a period of time, you get to start back over. Mm-hmm. And so that mental switch of being able to maintain momentum or regenerate momentum is really fun to me. So I think there's just different things, but I do remember I was a better tennis player than a volleyball player, but I loved going to volleyball practice as a high schooler. Yeah. And I did tennis. I liked it. I don't mean to say I didn't like it, but it wasn't like I looked forward to training all the time. And, it wasn't, I liked competing and I liked some success that I had, but I don't know if I loved the training of it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, for me, volleyball, the other thing with volleyball, it's a lifelong sport. And now, going back to you were a two sport person back in high school with tennis and volleyball. I had Eric Shoji on, and he was a tennis player and volleyball player as well. And for him, he said having that solo sport really helped him, sort of separate, and it was very beneficial playing the two different types of sports. Did you find that the same?
Yeah, there's so much research behind that, right? The psychological side of lack of burnout, being a tennis player specifically is so individually based. So I had to be resilient personally. No one was going to pick me up. If I was
Right.
playing lousy, I had to do that. So I think you learn skills there that help you. Um, I think the hard part right now, I've got a daughter that just finished high school. She just graduated this weekend, but she's a multi-sport athlete. The hard part that's probably different than when I grew up is I kind of did tennis all the way around, but actually during volleyball season, I'd kind of rest and not play as much tennis. Now you do all of it all the time. So
Right.
even though she was intense basketball season, she still was doing club volleyball. And I do think we're wearing bodies out. Now, I do think it's good she was working all those all those different muscles. And it was definitely more good than bad, but her body's worn out. And I think, we're doing a lot of pounding on these kids at a young age.
Yeah, it's I've got three kids. My youngest is my athlete, and we're seeing just 2 years ago she started, but it's like fall is high school, then club, and then in the summer there's camps and everything like that. Like when I was younger, it was like you played everything, and the days of like, hey, let's get the kids together in the neighborhood and play some baseball, play basketball, multiple sports. I don't think those days, that's here anymore.
Yeah, very rarely. I mean, occasionally you hear those stories of kids, doing a pickup baseball game in a backyard or wiffle ball, but I don't think that's the norm,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah. And now, after high school, you went to Truman College?
Truman State.
Truman State.
Yep.
And how was and you played volleyball there as well? How was that
Mhm.
experience?
It was good. We I think made the NCAA tournament 2 of my 4 years. We weren't a powerhouse, but we were solid. We had a lot of attrition in our program, so I came in with 5, and on senior night I was the lone senior.
Oh,
So
wow.
battling through some of those sort of things. It wasn't a perfect journey,
Yeah.
but I think I realized how tough I was at different times to be able to weather some ups and downs while other people got out. But I learned a lot, learned some things I loved and learned some things that I probably don't do within our program.
Mm-hmm.
But I really feel all those experiences help us, in whatever we do. It would be,
Right.
whatever my job was going to be. But it was interesting after my junior year, a lot of my friends quit, my closest friends. And I debated, like, do I want to do this again? And
Yeah.
my senior year was one of my most rewarding years because I almost jumped into our assistant coach quit there was lots of things going on, and I got to almost, I wouldn't say I was co-coaching, but the coach would lean on me a lot. So I got to jump into that role. And we had a lot of freshmen that played, and I really loved that experience of having those younger players on the team. So, you know, um, those experiences I think shaped me in different ways to, hopefully help as I've developed as a coach.
Yeah. And now, was it back when, was it that experience there that where the coaching bug bit you, or had you been coaching prior?
No, I really didn't have any intent to coach, to be honest. I don't think I knew what I wanted to do. I was interested in higher ed. My master's is in higher ed administration at Iowa, and at that point I thought I probably wanted to be like a dean or something on the student services, more on the academic side was what I was thinking. Now I did get an emphasis in athletic administration. So when I started coaching, I volunteered at Iowa when I went and got my master's for a year, but that lasted a year. It led to my first job. I mean, that was kind of a weird deal too. The coach resigned mid-season. We were bottom of the Big Ten. Um, and they let the coaching staff go, and they had problems with the search, and they came back to me and said, "Hey, would you be the interim coach?" So I was 22
Oh
and
my
I was the
God.
interim head coach at Iowa in the spring. And those poor women, I mean, they probably were like, I mean, one of them was older than me. I mean, I knew nothing. I mean, truly, I apologize if I coached you on that team. But it looked really good on a resume. So I coached high school after that. And that on my resume, that Iowa experience got me my first job. So, but no, I think my intent, even as I was starting to coach, I did some club coaching and really liked that.
Mm-hmm.
and I liked my experience. I loved the high school coaching that I did. But I think I always thought I'd move into administration, and I still might, but
Yeah.
so I've been in this a while at this point.
Yeah. And what was your path to Creighton?
So I was at Kirkwood Community College for 3 years. It's actually a great story. So I went to Lincoln East High School, and Terry Pettit was the longtime Nebraska coach prior to John Cook, godfather of Nebraska volleyball. His daughter was a freshman at Lincoln East High School when I was a senior, and she was a setter and I was a setter. And I liked her. I never saw Coach Pettit. He was coaching his team, but I liked Kathy. And so I think when I'd come back from college, he let me work some Nebraska camps. I think later I found out that he thought I was nice to his daughter and kind of took her under my wing, but there was no intent behind it. Anyway, so the Creighton job opened after 3 years at Kirkwood, and Terry gave my name to Bruce Rasmussen. Terry was helping with names, and that got me in the door. But I think it's a great lesson to anyone of treat people kindly. I can't tell you how many times in my professional life or personal life things come full circle. So I don't care if it's someone that's high up on the totem pole or low on the totem pole. We need to be kind to people in general, because that changed my life. Coach Pettit giving my name changed my life. And then he went on to mentor me, because I was 27 and clueless when I came to Creighton. I'm still clueless, but I was really clueless. And he still mentors me to this day, in fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Since starting this podcast, I've noticed that just the volleyball circle, it's a small circle. Everybody knows everybody. And, from the guests that I've had on, we're talking, top tier players in the world, top tier coaches. Everybody's just been fantastic people on. There's like egos are left. I don't know where they are, but they're not there. They're, these people are coming on and they're just super welcoming and just very informative guests.
Yeah, lots of great people in sport. And I think that's one of the reasons I've stayed in, is that, you go play against your friends. You don't wish ill on them. You want to beat them, but then
Right.
afterwards you're friends again.
Yeah, absolutely. 20 years of coaching you've been at Creighton. What have been some of the big changes you've seen from a coaching standpoint, styles or anything like that?
Yeah, so much. I mean, I guess when I got to Creighton, I was, I hadn't played high level volleyball. I'd never been a part of a great volleyball program, like a powerhouse type program. So I came in doing crazy things. Like my college coach, we'd run about a half a mile to warm up every day, which we now know is not good for vertical jumps. So when I came to Creighton, I would have the team run all these laps. And luckily I had really great assistant coaches that were like, hey, can we talk about this warm up? They massage things well to give different ideas. But even from a training standpoint, when I started, we were still training midline passing. I think one thing that I think we do as coaches pretty well here at Creighton is we will listen to different things and we'll evolve and change. And we will have some players do, most of our players are going to swing block, but we have a couple players that static block, because what we've found is maybe for them, their stats are a lot higher,
Yeah.
So I think there's been a ton of evolution in our game, the back row attack. Setting's going to change transformationally over the next couple of years with the double contact. So how are we going to take advantage of that or adjust to it, however you look at it? So, that's one thing that we always try to do. But the flip side is I don't believe that I should go to a clinic and automatically say, that's a great coach, I'm switching to what they're doing just because they said it. And I see that happening a lot. So I think you've got to have great understanding, because the biggest thing we have to relay to our players is that they buy into it. So if we say, hey, we're going to pass with one eye closed, if you get them on board, you might be great at it, right? So the big thing is getting buy-in from players on whatever we're teaching them.
Yeah. And now, over your period there at Creighton, what have been some, I know there's a huge, like I looked at the accomplishments, it's like, there's massive amount of things you've accomplished at Creighton. What have been some of your personal highlights?
When I took over in 2003, they were 3-23. So, I had no vision that we'd have the success, but my ultimate goal for the program that I hoped one day was to make the NCAA tournament. And so we did that in 2010, and that was a moment for me. And we ended up winning around in the tournament, but all those players that had, when we started in 2003, that first recruiting class, we were just selling a dream,
Yeah.
this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. And by 2010, those players had seen the progress when they decided to come to Creighton, or at least some, and they were buying into, hey, we're going to be the first team. And now our players they can see the foundation and all these players before. So I remember being excited for that 2010 team, but I remember being just as excited for all the women that had, not made it, been close, and had really built the foundation. So that was a really powerful moment
Yeah.
that I'll always remember.
All right. And now, what would you attribute the success of the program? Was there a key, was it that key year that you guys made the NCAA tournament? Was that a big pendulum shift, or was it just a gradual, year after year putting the effort and the grind in?
Yeah, definitely the latter. I think one thing that we're really proud of is the sustainability of the program. Is that we didn't have a star player that made us good for 4 years and then fall off the map. That we've graduated players. We've made 12 straight NCAA tournaments, so that means we've had a lot of turnover. To be able to do that. But I think the sustainability is the fact that we did try to do it the right way. We didn't run players off from the get-go. We had honest conversations with players. Some was like, we don't think you're going to play. We have these players coming in. But we tried to make sure we treated everyone, whether they were playing or not playing, well. And again, if you're out of place for a long time, those things come full circle. Kids that didn't play are still talking about your program. And so how did you treat them? But yeah, no, I think we've really tried to do it. It's not a one-hit wonder, that we've tried to do it the right way, and evolve and, do different things each year that might be a little bit different. So we're not getting stagnant, not always reading the same things or the same, plan of attack, that we're, renegotiating each year so that we can be the best we can be.
Yeah, excellent. And now, sort of adding on to that, you were talking about the sustainability of it. With college sports, you have these, these kids for 4 years, and you're rotating out leaders every 4 years. How do you sort of ensure that the leadership you have now, you're lined up with a good group of girls coming in who are ready to step up? Is that something that you identify your seniors to be the leaders, or from all levels you're seeing the leadership, people step up?
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of varies year to year how we approach it. I think generally our juniors and seniors morph into the primary leaders, and that could be the people that are organizing the summer open gyms and making sure people show up in the right color t-shirt. That's leadership, right? There's organizational. That's
Mm-hmm.
a really key cog, and important that people don't forget they're not going to be late for the bus ride, whatever. So that's a piece that a lot of times our older players will do. But I do think we're always trying to foster leadership, even as they're freshmen, sophomores. I think freshmen need to come in and they can lead by example. I don't ever usually have to say that out loud. Most of them have enough emotional IQ to come in and be like, they shouldn't be the one running their mouth off.
Right.
Like, they need to watch. And that doesn't mean that their voice doesn't start to evolve. But I think there's a process of, like, I've got a daughter that's going to go play at Northern Iowa next year as a freshman. And I've said, she is allowed kind of a natural leader sort of kid. But she knows, like, I need to go in and watch, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what I need. I need to work my tail off, and I need to go watch for a little while. And then you gain respect, right? So then your voice can start to be heard. So I've done different things. We've done leadership training, sometimes in a small group. The last 2 years we've done, like, for instance, this year we did a 30-minute meeting every once a week that hit on a bunch of different leadership things. The year before, my assistant built a whole curriculum on leadership. So I kind of like that.
Yeah.
But, because I think the goal, even if they're not ever named a captain, we're building leaders. And I also think, my players, what we'll say is, people might get named captain, but you guys are all, if anything goes down, you're always welcome in the office to come talk to us. And we
Yeah.
need you all to lead.
Excellent. Now, something I've just been curious about since, like I said, I started this podcast, understanding the dynamics of college volleyball, is the transfer portal. And, over the last 20 years, has it morphed to sort of something different, or was always sort of the same way it's been?
Well, the term transfer portal is new.
Oh, okay.
But we've had transfers. But, when I started, I mean, it was a lot of control. So like, the one thing that stayed consistent within the sport of volleyball is you never had to sit out. In a lot of sports, and a lot of people publicly think everyone, because men's and women's basketball and football, you had to sit out. That means everyone had to sit out. That is actually not the case. But what you had to be was you had to be released. So if a player came in and said, hey, I want to leave Creighton, I, as a coach, would have, or the compliance would have the power to say, no, we are not releasing you. No one did that. Very, very rarely did anyone say, because if I had a player that came in and would have said that, I would have been like, well, if you don't want to be here, I want you to go someplace where you want to be, right? That's not our job to keep kids. So they had to be released. The other thing that they could do is you could dictate, you could write in schools that they couldn't go to. Now, the normal one was, it was mandated you couldn't transfer within a conference. That just changed in the last few years. So you couldn't be in the Big East and go to another Big East school.
Yeah.
But you could also write another school. I remember we tried to recruit a kid. I won't say where she was transferring from, but their coaches put in that she couldn't go to any school that was in the top 150 RPI. So they basically forced her to go to a bad school.
Oh my God.
But so like that stuff could never happen now. Now you can enter the portal and go wherever you want.
Yeah.
And so the portal hasn't, I'm much more disenfranchised some with the NIL stuff than I am the portal. The portal, the thing I don't like about the portal right now is it's so normalized for the athletes. And I don't think volleyball led that by any stretch. I think we saw that particularly in basketball, men's basketball, when they're having like 30% of their athletes jump into the portal.
Yeah.
So then it becomes very much the norm of, hey, if it's not perfect for me, I'm just going to hop in the portal. But the thing they don't tell you is a lot of these kids don't eventually get picked up. Now, if you're a marquee kid, of course, you're going to get picked up, but most kids aren't. And so if you're coming from just a solid program, but not a great program, you may jump in the portal and not get picked up and not be able to play. So it's not as glamorous as it sounds, because there's a lot of kids that don't find that next opportunity that they're thinking they're going to find.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing, I've heard, a few coaches that have been on talked about the transfer portal. It's good that, a kid at 18 or, 17, when they decided they want to go to a certain school, they get there. It's like, it's not, homesick or whatever. But at the same time, sometimes you want to tough it out. You don't want to, because you learn life lessons from that, from, difficult experiences. And just because you may, get a bad vibe or whatnot, you shouldn't just pick up and leave.
Yeah, it's a balance for sure. If you're being mistreated or
Right.
you're having some mental health crisis or just generally unhappy, of course, that's not, I don't think any of us coaches want that for kids. But is it like, I didn't start my freshman year and I'm going to have to compete my sophomore year and maybe play my junior year? Those kids are few and far between that'll just work their tail off to fight for that spot. Nowadays, it's, am I going to play early? If not, I want to go do something else. And that definitely was not the case 15 years ago. I had plenty of players that sat the bench a few years. And in fact, one of our best players this year, Kiana Schmidt, she sat the bench for 2.5 years and then started her last year and a half and then did a COVID year and was, just a star player her last 2 years. But she put in time on the bench and was rewarded for it and was a star for us. But a lot of people don't have that takes a resilient person and a great work ethic. And, not all kids have that right now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. From a recruiting standpoint, it is critical to college sports. What sort of qualities or characteristics you're looking from that athlete that makes them a good fit for your program?
Yeah, there's obviously the talent stuff, right? So how high can they jump? How tall are they? Are they great? So I think those are the easy ones, right? Can they physically play at our level? We've hung our hat as a program on culture. And so I know every coach says that, so that sounds like it's a talking point. But I think if you talk to our players, that's one of the reasons they came here. If you're all about, if you come in and are like, I want to be first team All-American, I want this, this probably isn't the place. I want a kid that says, I want to go to a Final Four, I want to win I want to do whatever I can to make my team great. Those are the type of kids that we're looking for. And so how do we look for that in recruiting? First of all, we talk to a lot of people. So their club coach, their high school coach, so we'll try to find out as much as we can about a kid. We always like to see a kid play when they're losing. I mean, I'd much rather, I love it every once in a while. You don't often see this, but when a kid gets pulled, how do they respond? Do they go to the bench and cry, or do they jump, because those are all experiences they might have in college. And how do they treat their parents? Like if they come on a visit, because guess who's their mom away from home? Me. So if it's a kid that's treating their parents disrespectfully, I can usually make the jump that they're probably going to do the same thing to me. So those things are real within our program. I don't know if everyone does that, but for us, those things are really, really important.
Yeah. Excellent. And sort of adding on to that, when you leave, high school or club and you come to college, you're making it to a program like yours. You're that alpha coming from club. You're starting now, having to be adjusting to a different role. Now you may be a role player. You may be coming off the bench. That's a tough thing for a lot of these kids to adjust to. And then you add in, it's first time away from home. Women's volleyball is a fall sport. That's a lot to put on a kid. How do you not lose those kids?
It is hard. And I think we lean into that. We talk about it, even the recruiting process, we'll sell all the great things, but I mean, I'm pretty transparent that it's not going to be perfect all the time, and there's going to be hard times. But I think the big thing that is important from my standpoint and my staff standpoint is that the players know that if they're struggling, we care, and that struggling is okay. And we'll help them through it, and they can come and talk to us, or we have resources for them to talk to, because I think, when you feel isolated, is when, that's when you can really hit a bad point. Right. So, it could be academic struggles. It could be homesickness. It could be playing time. All those things weigh in. And those are very, very real things it could be social media. I mean, nowadays they're dealing with that. People write nasty things. They forget that they're 18, 19-year-old women or men. I mean, for any sport. And they act like they don't have feelings. I mean, it's amazing what people will do when they're anonymous and how nasty they can be. So there's a lot of different things. So I don't think there's a silver, it's not a perfect scenario, but right. I think first and foremost, you want them to be able to talk about their struggles. Because I think if they can come in and say, I'm failing a class and I'm freaking out, like we can help them then, if they do it, if they do it on their own, we can, or I'm really homesick. Okay, that's normal. Let's talk about how, to what degree, what are some things that we can do? And then we really work hard with our upperclassmen. I'll always ask the freshmen after they're done with their first year, what did the upperclassmen do well? What can we do better? So, because then I'm like, okay. And at this point, fortunately, we've got a great group. So usually the freshmen are like, they were awesome. And I'll be like, okay, next year it's you, because the fear that you had, we're going to have some people arriving in a month and they're going to be scared. And how are you going to make them feel welcome? And what are the things that we can do better? So really trying to encourage them to now take on that role of leadership.
Yeah. Excellent. And now, another recruiting question now, with your daughter going to UNI, what was it like being on that side of the fence?
Sadly, I didn't get to go on any of the visits because of the way our calendar plays out, which bummed me out because she went in August and I was in preseason. So I didn't go on any visits. I'm sure the coaches liked it, but it was fascinating. I will say this, all these things that I tell other families when they come visit, right, of what I think should be important. I'm happy to say I told her the same things. So to me, it's about people and how you're going to be treated. That was numero uno. I wanted her to play for a good person. She came down to 3 final schools, and I felt like all 3 of those coaches and their staffs were good humans, that if some crisis hit in her life, they were going to care about her. That was a big thing. And then I think it's about finding the level. Well, I shouldn't say this. The question I had for my daughter was, how important is playing for you? How important is playing early for you? Because if she wanted to go to a top 20 program, she could have walked on at a top 20 program. And I said, you will have opportunities to do that, but you probably won't play, so we had that discussion. And trust me, as a top 20 program, we need kids like that. Like I love some of those kids that are just role players, ready to do with an injury, work their tail off. She said, no, I want to go to a place that they think I have a shot to play. So that whittled down schools. So we kind of talked about that. And then it went to just her visiting some schools and deciding which one felt right. Because at that point it was, who she connected with. And it was hard. She liked all the schools that she visited. She had pros and cons for all of them. And then you make a choice. And, same thing I tell recruits is it's not that a choice is wrong. They're all right choices. It's which one feels a little bit more right. So that's the one she jumped with.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Pardon, my dogs are going nuts. My wife and my daughter are just getting home. Hopefully they'll settle down.
I didn't even hear them.
Excellent. All right. So now, where are you looking for, the kids you're recruiting? Are they reaching out to you? You're going to club tournaments. And also let's add to the fact that you're probably in one of the best spots to find, volleyball players.
Yeah, our team has definitely been Midwestern laden. I mean, we definitely we've had Californians and Floridians and Texans, and we've had a smattering throughout the country, but there's a ton of talent, like you alluded to, in the Midwest. So we start in the Midwest. Yeah, so now I'm losing. So yeah, so that's kind of how we start. But then two different ways. Primarily is club. Almost, we're going to go find kids even when they're young, start sending questionnaires. If they send back, that's a good indication that they at least maybe have an inkling of interest that they want to continue the conversation. So that gives us some indication there. We'll work through club. There's so many rules. So we have to follow all those rules on how much we can communicate with club coaches, what we can say. And then the other thing is that kids email us. And I do think that's smart to do. Because that at least gives us, okay, this is a kid we should look at. Sometimes we know just by video, they're probably not going to be our level. And we try to let them know that right away so they can start looking at other schools. But we have I have an amazing assistant coach, or actually he's associate head coach, Brian Rosen. And, he funnels every single kid that emails us, gets an email response, or at least through their club coach. So we try to make sure that we're engaging and we're honest. If we know that they're not going to be a fit, we try to tell right away. We get a lot of club directors will say how much they appreciate that, because I think a lot of people will just ghost them.
Yeah.
As compared to just saying like, hey, thanks, but no thanks. And again, as someone that is helping my kids navigate that, you'd just rather know, right? Like pull off the Band-Aid. Same with on the other end, when a kid's not interested in Creighton, I'm like, tell us. Because we're going to find out at some point. We'd rather find out sooner rather than later, so we can go get the next kid.
Yeah.
So those are some big things that we kind of watch.
Now, any certain dates, that are circled on the calendar year? Senior night's always a big thing, but are there certain matches of the year like, we can't wait for that one, or it's the first home game?
Oh, I think there's several. Playing at home the first time is always a blast. A lot of times they'll do like some years they'll have a barbecue, and so students will come out, and they've even shut down the cafeteria, things along those lines. The pink out's always a special night, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Within our league, Marquette is kind of the other rival school. The two of us, since we've entered the Big East since 2013. Well, they won it in 2013, and we've either won it or tied them. So those two teams have won all the Big East championships since the new Big East. So those are always fun matchups. Yeah.
And now, with spring season wrapped up, what do you look for? What do you look from the team during that sort of spring season sort of time frame? Playing without the seniors, now seeing who's stepping up and whatnot.
Yeah. Springs vary a lot. This year we had 17 players, which was way more. We usually have 10 to 12. So this spring was really different than any other spring, because we could do a ton of 6-on-6, and it was so much fun. I always tell the team the spring is about the individual and the fall is about the team. So in the spring, we're really locked into what individually you need to do to get better. So we spend a lot of focus on small group work. Very normal to have a kid work on their own either 15 minutes before or after practice if they're working on things. Not that we don't do that in the fall, but the spring is going to be much more, like I said, breakdown of a skill. In the fall, a lot of times when you break down a skill, you get worse before you get better.
Yeah.
And so we're very hesitant usually to do that in the fall, but in the spring, we had a freshman this year that, played all fall. She didn't start, but she played a little bit. But it was a full breakdown on her arm swing this spring. And so that was kind of fun, and, seeing her progress.
Excellent. And now, are you seeing, with the kids coming up from club and high school, are you seeing any sort of tendencies you wish club would work more with on players, whether it's like becoming a better overall player or a certain type of serving, anything like that? You guys really need to focus on this with your players.
I think it really varies club to club, to be honest. I think the biggest thing that I see is overuse. I mean, I can't say this enough, but I think the club season's too long. I think it should end. They basically go into a moratorium for about 6 weeks. So they play through August. Then the Division I calendar goes to a quiet period, meaning no recruiting. So club basically, it doesn't shut down, but it takes a big taper period and then it amps back up in June, early June.
Yeah.
And I think we should be playing nationals after that, like end of April, May, maybe even Memorial Day. Because what's happening is these kids get done the club nationals for USA doesn't get over until July 11th this year. Okay. So high school seasons are already starting. So they come back and their high school coach, most of them are like, you've missed so much. You need to come play. You need to come play. So these kids who don't want to let anybody down because they're such overachievers are like, oh, I'm tired. I just have been doing club, but I got to go to high school because I'm the one of the best players on the team. And the coach says I'm a leader and I'm not there right now. So I got to go to workouts and I got to do all this. I'm starting to get recruited for college. So I better go to these college camps on top of it. And now I'm feeling, like these kids are not resting and they really need a month rest. I mean, we really need to give them a long time and we give them like 3 or 4 days and we throw them back to the wolves. So that's really probably my biggest thing is, if anything that I can just keep pounding. And the thing is, Barry, is that if you talk to club coaches, you talk to high school coaches, you talk to parents, everyone agrees. Everyone wants it shorter, but we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And so, I want people to, I can only sound the alarm, but like other people need to start raising their voices and saying we need change.
Yeah, absolutely. Because last year was my first year for my daughter Experience High School and they're going 5 days. It's just, and that is solid for those. Yes, it's a short period for high school volleyball, but still it's you don't get a lot of breaks.
Then they go right into club.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And now, over the years, what have been some of the most significant lessons you've learned as a coach and how's it influenced your philosophy?
Oh gosh, I've made a lot of mistakes. But
you learn from those though.
Absolutely. And, hopefully I didn't break a kid. Maybe there'd be the ones that would come back and be like, oh no, you did. But I think, when I really try to think about the overarching things that I've learned, it's communication. I think I'm still not perfect at it, but I've learned over communication is better. Kids, aren't sure why you're making the decisions that they're making. And so and I think as adults, we do this too. You start making up in your head what's going on. It can be the littlest things. We just have, you pull a kid and you think everyone knows why a kid is being pulled. They just shanked 3 passes, right? But what we've learned is we have a rule on our team that if a kid gets pulled out, someone has to talk to him. And usually the kid goes, I know why I got pulled out. I'm fine, right? But in case they didn't, we want to make sure that they understand. And it doesn't. And the other thing is I want them to know is it's not personal. It doesn't mean A, they're not going to get another shot. B, it doesn't mean I don't love them. We're just trying to win volleyball games. And one of the things that I talk to my players about now a lot is that I'm going to make playing time decisions, but that does not mean that I don't love you. And that a lot of times as players, we think this is personal. I am not playing because coach does not like me.
Right.
And I recruited all of you. I like all of you, but I can only play this number of people, which means some of you will not be playing, but that does not indicate at all how I feel about you as a human.
Yeah.
So that's been a big thing that we talk about a lot in our program of them kind of, and sometimes they'll come in and I can tell they're mad and I say this is personal. And I've had players say it is personal right now. It feels I'm angry with you, coach, on the decision that you're making. And I respect that because I'm not perfect. And I also know I'm making sometimes subjective decisions that they may think are not the right ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. And now, overall, what is the most rewarding thing about coaching for you?
Oh gosh, there's so many things, but I always love seeing alums flourish. Like that's, you know, that's awesome for
Yeah.
me. Seeing them have success or be happy maybe is even the bigger thing. There's been a couple, I've got a lot of kids that most of the kids on my team generally would have gone to, if you took volleyball out of the equation, a lot of them come from really good backgrounds that they would have gone to college regardless.
Yeah.
Right. But I will tell you, the ones that really stick with you are the kids that you think maybe wouldn't have gotten their degree or maybe wouldn't have gone to college if they hadn't had sport. Right. And maybe they struggled early in their time or they didn't do well academically. And maybe our academic advisor took them under their wing and got them to learn how to study. And then when they walk out with a degree after 4 years or 5 years or 4.5, whatever it takes them, I know how that's going to change their life.
Yeah.
A college degree, a first generation college degree is a pretty remarkable thing. And so those are really rewarding to see those kids, think that this opportunity to be a part of this team is impacting them in that kind of way.
Excellent. And now, any words of wisdom or advice for that aspiring coach or who's looking to make that positive impact on these young athletes?
The more I coach, the more I think that our biggest job is to give kids confidence, so you're going to get the most out of your athletes by building them up. And I think a lot of times the role models that we've seen over the years are the throwing, we love the stuff that when a coach loses their mind on somebody. But I think the really great coaches get the best out of their kids by the kids wanting to be great because they love the sport or their team or their coaches so much that they want to be great. And if you can cultivate that sort of environment, I think that's really healthy for our athletes. They're not playing out of fear, they're playing out of love. So always kind of, and always remember the power of our words. And again, I'm sure I could have players, I'd probably cry if they'd come back and say, when you said this, it really hurt me. Right. Yeah. But the power of our words are big. And so we have to be really cognizant. You can say 99% of the things that we say are great, but they're going to remember the 1%. And so we need to be really careful to not take that for granted on how we say things in our tone and the words that we use.
Yep. Excellent. All right. So I got a couple of questions, one from a high school coach and one from a high school player. And we'll go to the coach one first. She asked, developing a team chemistry and cohesion is essential for successful in volleyball. How do you foster a positive team culture?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, there's a lot to it. I think, first of all, as coaches, we build that with honesty with our players. So they, you can't tell 10 players they're starting, right. And I think that happens a lot, or at least giving that impression. Sometimes you just have to have honest conversations. My daughter's high school coach is really, really good at direct, hard conversations. And I think it has led to good culture on their team because there is an expectation. Kids know what their role is. So I think that's one thing that can help a lot. The other thing is you have to hold players accountable to certain behaviors. And again, I don't think so. So an example is a player comes in and you're talking and they're rolling they're rolling their eyes at you. They're being disrespectful. Now, the way I would approach that, I wouldn't go off on that kid in that moment. I would take the kid off and say, what's going on? Like, you look like you're being disrespectful to me. Is something going on? And let's talk about it. So however you're going to address it, you have to address things, because if you let those things cultivate, other players will lose respect in you because you didn't handle it.
Yeah.
So I think the high standard every day, I don't like to yell. So like I would have conversations, but however you're going to communicate those things, I think, is important. And then, again, just letting your players know that they care. And I think the other big thing is there's an expectation how players treat each other.
Yeah.
And I think you can proactively talk about that, like empower your juniors and seniors at the high school level of how did you like to be treated when you were a freshman and a sophomore? What didn't you like? So let's talk about, when I came to Creighton, it was, there was a pretty set standard that they hazed the freshmen.
Yeah.
It wasn't that they were nasty to them, but they would haze them and they would, just do a little bit of demeaning things. And I actually didn't think it was that bad, but I did have some mentorship to say we need to get rid of that. And I'm so glad that we did. Of instead, let's love them up as compared to making them feel like they're, and you see this in fraternities and sororities.
Right.
Well, I got treated like crap, I'm going to treat them like crap. And I just think that's a
It just
really
takes them
bad
down.
culture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now, for the high school person, she's a setter, so she has a setter question. How can she develop a better volleyball IQ?
Well, hopefully, I mean, I think a couple things. Watch a lot of film, and
Yeah.
I think watch with an eye as a player or a coach of what's going on the other side. How big are the blockers? How slow is the middle blocker? Where's the weakest defenders in the back row that we want our players to attack to? Who on your team steps up at crunch time, and who's going to kind of get scared at crunch time and not perform?
Yeah.
So all those sort of things. How do I pull the block to bait the other side's block to create a hole? So I think there's a lot of different things, but I think one thing that I think a lot of young setters do is they don't pay attention to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got a 5-6 setter, and then they rotate, and you've got a 6-3 right side, that's a very different blocker for your outside hitter, and you need to be aware of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent advice. All right. So I got a fun question for you. So I had Eric Shoji on a while ago, and him and Taylor Averill have this thing, what's the toughest position in volleyball? So now, I've been starting to ask this of coaches. What do you think is the toughest position in volleyball? We'll go mental first and then physical.
Well, mentally, it's the setter.
Absolutely.
They have spoken as a former setter, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to run the show. You have to make the decision. So I would say that, from a mental standpoint. From a physical standpoint, this one's hard. I think you could make arguments for every position.
Yeah, I've had them across the game, but I have Cody Kessel said, the 6 rotation. I've had, Matt Ulmer. He also said from Oregon, he said it was a 6 position setter. So nobody's picked the middle blocker yet.
Setter?
No, sorry, 6 position hitter.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say is the outside hitter, just because they carry so much load passing, and they get all the crap balls. So if it's a crappy pass, the ball's coming to them and they got to make something out of it. So, but I feel bad that I'm not saying middles, because they have to work their tail off a lot, but I'm going to go with the outside hitter too.
All right, there we go. And now, what do you think in your opinion, what is the state of volleyball today?
It's awesome. We are trending in so many great directions. I think we're the number 1 team girls sport in the country for high schoolers. You've seen our numbers on television jump exponentially. Our crowds at the Division I level, I think at all levels, we are just breaking record after record after record.
Yeah.
So there's tons of momentum. Beach volleyball is skyrocketing. So you've got that piece that's going. Boys volleyball is growing. I think that is just some low-hanging fruit to continue to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the state of volleyball is really good. And, I think we still have a lot of room to grow too, especially in the your area of the country on the Northeast.
Yeah.
Can grow exponentially. So the Southeast a little bit, I think, is just ripe for some growth. We definitely have some challenges, we're becoming expensive.
Mm-hmm.
How do we create scenarios that all kids have the opportunity to participate in volleyball is a real challenge.
Yeah.
So like everything, we have challenges, but I think the momentum is definitely positive right now.
Yeah. And right now we got the VNLs going on, and then we got the Olympics. So it's like, and then, and let's not forget, we have the PVF just happened their first season and
in Omaha on Saturday.
Yeah. Excellent.
Well, I got to put a plug in. Do you know that one of my alums is the number 1 beach team in the world? She is from Sioux Falls. Taryn Cloth is going to the Olympics, and my assistant and I are going to go support her. She is the first Creighton female Olympian ever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they're playing under the Eiffel Tower. It is going to be quite a scene, and we are just so proud of her and excited to root her on.
As a coach, that just got to give you the warm and
fuzzies. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So incredible. She's playing with Kristen Nuss, who is arguably the best beach player in NCAA history. They played at LSU after Taryn, and COVID changed Taryn's life because she got an extra year of eligibility and really developed. So keep an eye on them.
Absolutely. And now, away from the volleyball court, what are some things you like to do?
I have 3 daughters, so a lot of what I do is family time. I'm chasing them. I can't say I have a real, I think family time is what I do. I work out consistently, and I like to get my sleep. That's what I always say are kind of the things that I do pretty consistently.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey, you survived the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful to meet you. But before I let you go, like with past guests, who do you think has a good story in your circle, whether it's coaches, ex-players, current players that should come on and share their journey?
Well, after the Olympics, I think Taryn Cloth would be an incredible person to talk to. And then I think Leanne Williamson at University of South Dakota is fantastic. I think she's done a phenomenal job there.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey, enjoy your trip to Paris and enjoy that experience, and good luck next season.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.